Hey guys, so I was putting together my what sold video, which I'm about to show you, and I realized I did have a really good sale that was not on any of the platforms. It was a direct sale. And so I didn't have a way to show it to you. But I wanted to tell you the story because it shows you the power of networking and resellers helping resellers and everything like that. So if you remember, I did this video, I've talked about it before a couple times recently, Bins of Shame, where I was talking about my fabric backlog, my fabric stash. And in the video, I'll try to catch a screenshot of it, but I had this big long bolt of fabric that had rabbits, and they were like Victorian, dressed like in Victorian clothing, and they were having tea parties and all sorts of wonderfulness. And anyway, I had to figure out how to, I needed to get it listed. It had been like sitting around way too long. And I knew I needed help to get it all unrolled off the bolt because it was upholstery fabric, so it was long, right? And so anyway, I needed Mr. Pish Posh's help. We needed to get it all off, get it measured, get it folded up, whatever, figured out. Hadn't done it yet. Okay, so then I got a message, I think on Instagram, from one of you guys, from a viewer who had been watching that video, and they said, hey, listen, I just sold some of that fabric and my buyer wants more. So I was like, sweet, because then you might just have a for sure buyer, right? If you're going to do all that work, and maybe it can be listed right away. So she put me in touch with, like, the buyer was in touch with me. The buyer said she was in Australia, or the one of you guys told, the viewer had told me that her buyer was in Australia. Turns out once I started talking to the buyer, her client was in Florida, and so it just needed to get shipped to Florida. So I said, well, let me figure out how many yards I have. I got a chance to look at that other reseller's listing to see kind of how much she charged for what she had. And so Mr. Pish Posh and I cleared off this huge table that the boys have to do Lego on. And we spread it out, we measured it, turned out it was about 9 yards. So it was quite a bit. So I'm like, all right, she probably does not want all of this. Well, it turns out she did. She wanted all of it. And because I was selling all of it, I did drop my per yard price a little bit. And so I sold the whole lot of fabric to her for $225. And it's gone and it's sold. So here's like a little up close of what the fabric looked like. I don't even really have pictures. The whole transaction, we ended up just doing it through PayPal. Because I was going to list it and give her the link to the listing. And then I said, do you want to just do this directly? And they thought that was great. So I got my PayPal payment. We shipped it off to Florida, priority mail, and all has been good. But all I ended up having to do is take one snap photo just to confirm with the buyer that it was the actual fabric, that she was looking for. And so that was exciting. So that was probably my best sale of the week. And it wasn't on any of the platforms that, I'm sharing with you as we go into talking about eBay right now. Hey guys, so we've got another what sold. We're talking about what sold in our online shops from the week of December 18th through the 24th. And we're staying caught up with these things that have sold. We're starting off with a cookie press on eBay. So I think we talked about that last week, that this was November, December is a good time to sell cookie presses. And so this one is, it wasn't a great money maker, $18.24. But I picked it up for a couple bucks somewhere. And I think there were other ones listed, maybe even for less, but for some reason ours sold actually fairly quickly. Once like I said, we kind of did a quick rush. We were like, oh my goodness, we have these cookie presses, hurry up, get them on. And because time just has that way of getting away from us, right? Next up was one of the really good sales of the week. One of my kind of favorite things to do that I've done for the last 3 years. So I collect up these brass candlesticks at yard sales and thrift stores throughout the whole year. I feel like they used to be a lot easier to find. So this is a year's worth of candlesticks. And a lot of times I do get them at yard sales, it seems like lately. And as you can see in the listing, there was 18. There was a couple in there that were pairs, actually quite a few. There was one set of the really popular graduated tulip ones. And we had started off years ago on Etsy. We would sell these, you know, if we could find that set of graduated ones, you know, we would just sell them by themselves. And we just started putting them in the lot to kind of flesh out the lot quite a bit. And this sold, it was interesting because I keep expecting, I've done this for 3 years in a row. And I keep, like, one year I got $120, one year I got, I think, $160. And I usually have, it's funny, it usually is right around 18 to 20. I think the year I got 120, I had like 16 of them. And anyway, I keep expecting like this is a trend or something that's going to go away at some point, because I think people just, you know, they're for party decor or wedding decor where they just kind of fill up like a centerpiece of their table with all these different candlesticks. So I was like, well, I'm just going to try it. And I did $159.99. And it was like a week or so went by and I thought, oh, I probably did it too high. I'm like, I just kind of made a mental note. I should probably go back in and drop that price. And then it sold for full asking price of $160. And I probably paid $1 or $2. You know, some things I found the set of 7 together, the graduated ones. I think there were 7. I found those together at one time. You know, paid probably $1 or $2 or even less for all the other ones. Tilly. I have talked about Tilly before. This is one of my favorite hat brands that I've come across. Found a few at Goodwill. This one actually I found at our little outlet bins place, and it was a little bit, it's a winter hat, so it's like wool nylon blend, I think, and it was a little misshapen. So Mr. Pish Posh worked his magic, got it looking better, and this was an almost return. So I got feedback. The buyer, it was like the feedback was a little bit confusing. Like he said it fit him perfectly, but then he discovered inside that there's like a piece of something like a Velcro strap or something that you can move around to make it fit better. So I couldn't tell if that was a good thing or a bad thing or what. But anyway, he said, you know, he said it fit perfectly. And so then like a week later, a return opened up. And I was like, oh, that's weird, because he's already said he liked it. And the return reason was just he didn't like it. Like he tried it and it just didn't fit exactly the way he wanted. You know, he wasn't super happy with it. And so that return was open. I'm like, all right, whatever, we'll just resell it. And then I got a message like a couple days later. And he said, never mind, my wife is wearing it. We went to the mountains. My wife wore it. She loves it. So we're going to keep it. So I just said, okay, that's great. Either way, I said, just, you know, if you could get a chance to close that return, that would be great. So he did like a day later. So this actually sold for $40. But Tilly is definitely a brand to look out for in the hats. This pair of, I guess you'd call them slippers, but you know, you could wear them outside like slip on, and the brand is Taos. I always have things like, I say things in my head, but then when it comes to saying them out loud, I never know how to say them. Okay, so they're called Wilderness. They're clogs. I picked them up at a thrift store and they sold. I think all we had to do was kind of delint them and they sold pretty quickly. Here's well, you can kind of see it on there, the brand. I've sold the brand before. I don't have a lot of input right at the moment, whether it's like wonderful, wonderful, or if it was like these sold a lot faster than I expected. But I think they are a fairly solid shoe brand. This was another fast sale we had. It was one of the days Mr. Pish Posh and I were at, I think I talked about it last week, but we ended up at a thrift store nearby where his job was, and he was digging around in the knives. He has way more patience for the knife bin than I do. And he found these 2 Wusthof knives, which is a really good find because Wusthof is just kind of a no-brainer. Buy that brand of knife. And these sold he listed them that night, sold the next day for $50. And I do have a knife video. I digress, but I do have a knife video where we talk about different knife brands. I'll try to remember to link that at the end of the video. Lucky Legend. I remember picking this up at a thrift store on a trip out east a while back. So it took it didn't take that long to sell. It took a while to get listed. So once it finally got listed, it got some attention and we sold it for $30. And then this is just a classic Bolo, like be on the lookout type item for flipping. This has been a Bolo since I started reselling. Remington tight curls, they're hot rollers, they're skinny, they use them for pageants. They have always done really well. And I remember I had a few in like a backlog for a while. Just they needed cleaning, they needed tape taken off of them, or, different things like that. And so I remember it was during pandemic and I thought, I don't even know if they're doing pageants. Is anyone even looking for these? And they sold super fast. So I found these. These I think were on our trip back in June. And same thing. They took a little while to get listed. We had to get tape. The thrift stores like to tape stuff closed, remove the sticker, all that. So we got that tackled and those sold for $75. Another hat found at the bins. Outlet thrift store, Columbia. It's a vintage Columbia. Made in the USA. You can see the label there, and that sold for $20. We call it a boonie hat. This is a return. This will be coming back. I think it's coming back to me today, but it is a brand to take note of. She's just returning it because it didn't fit the way she liked. So Simply, it's a Canadian brand. And this sold within a day of me listing it for $39.99. So I will just do a quick relist when I get it back today. I should say the material on Simply is like Chico's Travelers. It's that slinky kind of travel fabric that doesn't wrinkle. I have a couple pieces myself and it's like, I just have a basic black shirt and it's like my favorite shirt. I do travel with it and it just works very nicely. Robert Welch, this is a Flatware brand that I usually pick up. It seems to do pretty well. The pattern was called Scoop Mirror. 2 teaspoons, sold for $25. This was a shirt. Again, I had it for a little while and then we finally got it listed. Mr. Pish Posh attacked some clothing that had been sitting around for a bit. The brand is WA Maker, W-A-H, Frontier Clothing. So a lot of reenactment and Western type clothing. I had sold a vest by this brand that I found. I found it, listed it, sold it pretty quickly, but this one had been kind of sitting around. And this one was made out of cotton, but it definitely had, a frontier look and everything. So it got, I don't know, people were checking it out pretty quickly, and it sold not for $50, but for $30. Vintage mug, Klein Tools. I think I've sold this mug before. It's a false graph mug, advertising Klein Tools, and it sold for $16.99. So I did get around to listing some ties. after I did all those tie videos. And I still have a bunch to list, obviously, but I did some of my square end knit ties. This one, the brand is Rooster, and it's made out of 100% alpaca wool. And in comps, there were 2 ties in the last 30 days that had sold, or in the last 90 days that had sold for $15. So I just went ahead and put $19.99, sent a 10% offer to a watcher that popped up right away, and they bought it for $17.99. I love finding vintage hardware. It always sells. This is a toilet paper roll holder, dispenser, whatever you call that, by Amarok, and the pattern is called Monterey, and that sold for $29.74. We got good feedback on that today. Next up is another one of the ties that I talked about in my video. It was a 1940s tie, and it actually did sell fairly quickly as well. They didn't pay right away, but then they eventually did pay. So again, someone took advantage of a 10% offer that I sent out to somebody who liked the item very quickly. And did I say that? $22.49. This one had some staining, had some discoloration. Otherwise, I probably would have started it off a little bit higher because it's a very popular type of style 40s tie that people look for. Oh, I don't know what that is. And then was this the last one? I think so. This was the last sale of that week. This Eeyore mug sold on the 24th. Disney Eeyore. It says good morning, if it is a good morning, which I doubt. All right. Eeyore is everybody's spirit animal, I think. So anyway, if I can even say that. Sold for $14.99. Now hopping over to Poshmark, just a handful of sales on some of the other sites. It was kind of a slow week, holiday week, that's kind of normal. But this one had been listed a little while. It's an NHL pullover for the Minnesota Wild. I think we picked that up at the bins. We sold this cool alpaca fleece. It was a men's 2XL. And I remember my husband picked this up. We were together at that thrift store in town that I told you about that just recently was bought by, it was in the church, and it was bought by a new owner because it had been closed for several years, and they're running it as a thrift store again. So he picked this up and then got home and was like, like the wear on it is a little bit worse than I really like. He's like, but he went ahead and listed it. We just listed it at a low price to try to kind of move it, and it sold pretty quickly for $22. And this was interesting. This was something we picked up at the bins one day, my husband did, and we got it listed. And I've been working on my cross-posting and cross-listing and trying to get a little bit more serious about it, and using VENDOO, which is what I use. And I've been cleaning up inventory. I've been looking at stuff and saying, you know what? Normally I would think, okay, Etsy, eBay, whatever, for something like this. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to cross-post it over to Poshmark. And you just never know, because I need to use Poshmark for more than just clothing. And that's where it sold. It sold like within a couple days on Poshmark, full asking price, no offers or anything like that. $25 for this vintage cheese grater. And then I also sold a Free People sweater I picked up recently, and that sold for $35. And then over on Ruby Lane, this little necklace is by Crements. Another one. Like, I just, I'm going to say it again. Reselling, it can be a lonely business, right? And so you read a lot, you see a lot of things written, and you're never really called upon to say the words out loud very often, unless you start a YouTube channel. And then you're like, Crements, that just sounds funny. Okay, but it's a good brand for jewelry. I definitely pick it up when I find it. And this one was very pretty with just, you know, a love knot in it. I could not find another one like it. Very delicate, but I think delicate jewelry is kind of having a moment. So, because people can layer it and everything. And that sold within a couple days for $30. And then a picture frame. Okay, so this is the picture frame that's in my thumbnail, I think, of my picture frame video. And look at that price, $40. This was in a box. I believe this was the one. It was in a box at a yard sale. You know, it's like vintage frames. People are not giving them a whole lot of value. It was a box on the floor under the table with a bunch of old frames. Like everybody's got a box of old frames or bins of old frames. We do. I mean, ours just date from like the early 2000s or something. But anyway, I just thought this one was so pretty. It was this black, the glass was black right here. It just, I mean, it had a pretty backdrop. And then what did it say on it? It was like, yeah, the little sticker on the back, 24 karat gold plated, right? So I don't know. It was just this really nice vintage mid-century frame. And I got $40 for it. I'm like, sweet. It took a while, it took a few months, but anyway, check those frames. And then the ever popular Oneida Twin Star pattern. This was for grapefruit spoons. And there are, you know, a lot of Twin Star sells, like it sells no matter what. None of the pieces sell like crazy high except for a few. And I was thinking, oh, grapefruit spoons, those are going to be like really good. They're just kind of average, just like all the other pieces. There are, I think it's like demi-tasse spoons, the little coffee spoons. Those are good money. And there's one other piece in there that is a little bit harder to find. Maybe some kind of butter spreaders or something like that I've gotten good prices for. But the average, like I would always pick up any Twin Star pieces that I find, you know, because I am totally good with even selling things for $5 a piece, but because you know they'll sell. And then I had 3 sales on Depop. I think and I was looking back, maybe one of these was the week before, because I remember in last week's video, or the last video a couple days ago from the week before, I had talked about like, oh, I think I forgot a Mercari sale. But then, yeah, it wasn't a Mercari sale I had forgotten. I think it was a Depop sale I had forgotten. So anyway, I sold these vintage Skechers on Depop for $40, and I'm just super excited about that. So vintage Skechers are having a day because look what else I sold on Depop. Another pair of vintage Skechers. So I don't think these sold for $35. I want to say, oh, now I don't even know where to look. Hold on. They sold for less than that, but they were not in the greatest condition either. Let's see. Okay, here we go. $25 is what those sold for. So vintage Skechers, if they have, here, let me see if the pictures, yeah, let's look at the pictures. I don't know. I lived through this time, so see the condition on the inside was a little bit worn, but it's like an older label on the inside. Even though they're made in China, I guess you can't really see. Depop just limits the number of pictures that you can have. I mean, it's 8. It's better than the 4 that it used to be, but so I had sold these for $25. They got a ton of interest right away. And then these I just listed straight onto Depop. I didn't put them anywhere else first. I just put them straight in here. And they paid full asking price of $40. So you kind of look for that lug sole, that kind of chunky sole. You look for the platform, all very kind of white 90s Y2K look. And then the other thing I sold on Depop was this cute little purse that looks like a skunk. It was made in Taiwan in the 80s. And it's been listed a long time. It didn't sell for 18. I think it sold for like 14 or something like that, but sold for a little bit less. And then we did have one sale on Mercari, and it was a toy, which is kind of normal for Mercari. Toys and discontinued beauty products are what we've done the best with. Okay, so that was it for that week. We're finishing up this week already, and so another What Sold will be coming out, later in the week. But I hope me sharing my sales does help you guys and help you see what's out there, and maybe open your eyes to a couple different things maybe that you hadn't thought of before when sourcing. But as always, leave a comment down below what you've learned, or go ahead and let me know what your best sale of the week was. Did things slow down so much for the holidays? Did you just shut down because you were busy? Just feel free to share, and we will talk to you later.